Hello everyone, I'm Paula Bartholomew, and as Director of Online Events, I'm really glad to be able to welcome you to Hawthorn University's webinar series. I'll be the moderator for this webinar, and I'm here with James Bernardinelli, who's engineering this presentation, and with Janet Ludwig, who's our Director of Education, and with Trudy Scott, who's our presenter. So thanks so much for joining us. We're really happy about it. We've got a great topic, a really important topic to begin discussing on mental health. Trudy's title is Food and Mood. We're going to be discussing the science behind the effects of food on anxiety as well as social phobias and panic attacks so that we can support a healthy mood. So let me give you a little bit of an overview of what's going to be presented. Trudy's known as a food mood expert with good reason. She's going to be able to delve into the current evidence that surrounds the connection between food and mood, and this evidence is mounting in a very good way. And she'll be discussing recent studies that support this for anxiety disorders. So how to maintain a healthy and stable mood is going to be discussed. Trudy's going to offer solutions for the food mood connection, discussing which foods to eat, foods to avoid, certainly talk about food quality and individual nutrients to supplement with. This presentation is going to provide the science behind the effects of food on anxiety and the related disorders. It's also going to address the benefits of foods and nutrients on health issues that often go hand in hand with anxiety disorders like depression and addictions and emotional eating. Several different digestive disorders and sleep disorders is a big one. There was an editorial in the American Journal of Psychology, and it offered a very powerful comment on some of these food mood studies. And they said, it's both compelling and daunting to consider that dietary intervention at an individual or population level could reduce the rates of psychiatric disorders. There are exciting implications for clinical care, public health, and research. Wow, that is a big statement, and right now I'm going to tell you about Trudy Scott so she can start sharing the information. Trudy's a certified nutrition who educates and empowers her clients about the healing powers of food so that they can find natural solutions for their anxiety or depression, emotional eating, and sugar cravings. Trudy works with clients both one-on-one and in groups. And she really works as a catalyst in bringing about life-enhancing mood transformations. And this begins with eating pure whole food and using some pretty amazing nutrients. Trudy does use a comprehensive 9-step approach with her clients that she developed to help them overcome their anxiety-related issues. And it is always, of course, customized to their unique biochemistry. Trudy's the author of the book, Antianxiety Food Solution, How the Foods You Eat Can Help You Calm Your Anxious Mind, Improve Your Mood, and End Cravings. If you don't have that book, I encourage you, if you have any kind of anxiety-related issues or know someone that does, it can be a really helpful book. It's a great read. Trudy also presents nationally to holistic health practitioners as well as mental health practitioners on food and mood. She talks about the research and gives them really powerful steps so that they can begin to educate and empower their clients and patients as well. And that's the point of the presentation here this evening, is to be able to educate and empower you. Trudy's been featured on NPR, on several national television shows, and has been quoted in several magazines. And you'll see on the slide here Trudy's 2 websites. She does publish an electronic newsletter entitled Food, Mood, and Gal Stuff, and it's a great read. And she's an avid blogger, so check Trudy out online. And it's really just such a pleasure to have Trudy presenting this webinar. I want to welcome you, Trudy. We're so glad to have you with us, and I'm going to let you get to it.
Thanks, Paula. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. That was really nice.
It's really nice to have you here.
It's great. And I'm just, as you know, I'm just so passionate about this topic, so I'm really pleased to be here sharing it, and let's get right into it. So what we're going to cover today is firstly, my story and why I'm so passionate about this, because I really am, and it's because of what I went through. And I want to share some stats because anxiety is a big issue, and it's increasing, and there's some implications when it comes to heart disease. So we really need to know the background so we can support our clients who do have the anxiety. And as you mentioned, there are these 9 steps that I use with my clients. And today we're going to talk about the first 5. It's all around food. And it's the foundation of what I do. I teach my clients about eating real food first, getting rid of the things that might be causing some of their anxiety. And then we start looking at some of the nutrients. Now, and the steps 6 to 9, as you said earlier, we're doing a series of presentations on mental health, and I will be covering balancing brain chemistry and the amino acids in a subsequent presentation, and then I'll also be going into pyroluria and some of these other factors in another presentation as well. But I'm going to mention these at the end of this presentation just so you can see how they tie into all of this. But what I really wanted to do today is share the research. As Paula said, there is so much research, and it's really exciting. And what I do is connect with some great researchers. As I see a paper come out, I contact them, and I have this dialogue going, and I'm following all the research that they're doing. And I'm going to share some of that. So you will see in step 1, obviously real whole foods is what we all work with when it comes to working with our clients. But the exciting thing is that there is research supporting this, and there's a lot of excitement around this, and what I wanted to become is mainstream. It needs to be part of mainstream. And as Paula said earlier, I present to mental health practitioners a lot because a lot of people with mood disorders don't go to a nutritionist. They will go to a doctor, or they will go to a therapist or a social worker first. So my objective is to get this information to the mental health professionals so they can in turn refer their clients to nutritionists like me and like you if this is something that you're interested in doing, so you can then help your clients. But what I want to do today is just share the research so you can see how much there is supporting all of this. I'm going to mention the 4 food solutions that I talk about in my book and that I use with my clients, because it is very individualized to each person's unique biochemistry, and we have to figure out what's going to work for each person, but we'll go into those briefly. Step 2 is obviously removing sugar, and I'm going to share with you how sugar can actually impact anxiety levels. And then, of course, having a good, stable blood sugar level is really important when it comes to anxiety as well. And then step 3 is removal of caffeine, and there's support for this in the literature. And a lot of people don't need the literature to actually believe it. They can feel it. It's amazing when I meet with someone and they say, yes, I have a cup of coffee and my hands are shaky, and yet they still continue to do it. So we've got to encourage them and show them what they can do to get off the coffee. Of course, gluten is a big factor. There's not a lot of knowledge out there about the connection between gluten and anxiety and social phobia and even schizophrenia, so I'll share some of the research in that area. And then step 5 is optimizing digestion. And this ties back to candida and probiotics and digestive enzyme status. So those are the areas that we're going to cover today. And then step 6 is balancing brain chemistry. Step 7 is addressing pyroluria. Step 8 is vitamin D, medication side effects, and other factors. And then step 9 is the lifestyle. And I'll touch on those, as I said, right at the end of the presentation. So let me just share my story in case you haven't heard it. I know some of you do know me and have heard my story, so apologies if you're hearing this again. But I am so passionate about this because of what I went through. I have been working as a nutritionist now for 10 years. I'm coming up for my 10th anniversary, which is very exciting. And prior to that, I worked in corporate America as a computer programmer. And I was working really long hours. I was really stressed out and totally burned out adrenals. I was heading into perimenopause and discovered that I had gluten issues. I was very prone to blood sugar swings. I have pyroluria, which is this genetic condition where you have a higher need for zinc and B6. Basically, I was a mess and started to get increasingly anxious. I would just wake with this feeling of doom, fearful of everything. I didn't like doing presentations. I didn't like socializing, and actually had 3 panic attacks. and it was terrifying. I thought I was dying. I didn't know what was going on, and I just decided there's got to be something biochemical because, as you can see from this picture, I'm a rock climber. I actually met my husband on a cliff face in South Africa, and he proposed to me in the mountains, and we had our honeymoon on Mount Kenya. And I spent, 15 years rock climbing, spent the night on a portaledge on the side of a cliff face in Zion National Park and done some ice climbing. So pretty crazy things on rock faces. So I wasn't a timid, anxious type of person. But it turned out it was biochemistry, and because of my upbringing in South Africa and not wanting to turn to medication first, I found a wonderful nurse practitioner and a wonderful naturopath and started to find solutions for my health. And it took a number of years to get all the answers. I eventually went back to school to become a nutritionist because I was so amazed at this powerful connection between how I was eating and the supplements I was taking, and the fact that it actually completely stopped my panic attacks and eliminated my anxiety and the social anxiety. The discovery about the social anxiety and the pyroluria came later when I worked in Julia Ross's clinic. I worked there for 2 years. And learned about pyroluria, did the testing, discovered that I have this genetic condition that requires a higher need for zinc and B6. End of the story, changing my diet, getting off gluten, addressing my adrenals and my hormones, getting off the coffee, very, very sensitive to coffee, and a number of other things really made a big difference. I actually happened to be a GABA girl. GABA, the amino acid, gamma aminobutyric acid, was my saving grace while I was trying to figure all of these things out. So it can take a while to figure everything out. And what I did was write the book so I could pull everything together, because there is a lot of, I wanted to pull the research. I wanted people to be able to take this book and give it to their doctors or give it to their nutritionists or give it to their mental health practitioners and say there is research supporting this. And putting the book out was a great way to get this information into more hands. So let's just talk about some stats here. Anxiety is the most common mental illness in the U.S., and it's currently at about 40 million adults. These numbers are pretty old. This was on the Anxiety and Depression Association website in 2010, and it hasn't been updated since. But we do know that the rates are going up. Adult rates of generalized anxiety disorder have tripled. Panic disorder has doubled. Women are affected by anxiety at more than twice the rate of men. We think that is obviously related to hormonal swings, also could be related to the fact that women make less serotonin than men, and also because we as women tend to take care of everyone else before we take care of ourselves. So that is something that I have to impress upon my clients, is taking care of yourself so you can take better care of your family, and in that way you're going to be healthier. Now, in the introduction, Paula mentioned how when you've got anxiety, you'll have these other issues. So we'll often see depression, we'll often see addictive behaviors, intense sugar cravings, eating disorders, emotional eating, and then sleep problems. And then there's a lot of research showing a connection between digestive issues like IBS and anxiety. And it's which comes first? Is it the low serotonin that's causing the anxiety and the depression and the sleep, or is it the poor food or the gluten intolerance that is causing malabsorption, so someone ends up becoming low serotonin? So it ends up being this cycle of things that feed each other. Unfortunately, the rates in kids are going up, and you've probably seen all the articles in the Wall Street Journal and some of the other big publications talking about how many kids are medicated. And it's terribly unfortunate, because kids, when they have their diet changed or they get on some of these nutrients, turn around so quickly. And I'm going to share a case study of someone that I'm working with at the moment. And it's just so amazing that we can change things when it comes to, instead of having kids get onto medications, we can just change their diet. So we'll often see ADD, ADHD, a lot of kids on the autism spectrum disorder also have neurotransmitter imbalances. They often, as we know, have gluten and dairy issues. And then we'll often see a pyroluria in the autism community. So it is a lot more common than we realize. Learning problems, and then, of course, these addictions and full-blown addictions, which can be to prescription medication and then also to street drugs. We do need to take it seriously, and I impress this upon my clients all the time, is to take it seriously. Don't wait until you have a panic attack. Unfortunately, most of us do this. I did. You know, I was stressed out. I knew I was stressed out. I was working really long hours, but it took 3 panic attacks for me to, you know, start to do something. I actually started doing something right after the first one, but it took a while for me to get the answers. But there's so much research showing how much stress this places on the heart, and there's a number of studies showing that women who have anxiety and panic attacks may have an increased risk of heart disease. And there was just a study that came out at the end of last year talking about men and women who have the highest third of anxiety symptoms had this 33% higher stroke risk. And this is something that's really important because, as I mentioned earlier, women are more prone to anxiety. And what's not often realized with the clients that I work with is that women have 6 times more death from heart disease than they do from breast cancer. So most of my clients are more aware of breast cancer, and they you know, read more articles about breast cancer and are more concerned about it. Not saying that they shouldn't. Obviously, that's really important, and there's all these lifestyle and dietary factors that can have an effect. But heart disease, more women die of heart disease, way more women die of heart disease. And you know, we are now seeing this connection between anxiety and heart disease. So if we can obviously reduce the anxiety, make some of these dietary changes that I'm going to talk about, it's going to help with the heart disease and breast cancer risk and everything else as well, which is the great thing about using an integrative approach like this. We're dealing with the most serious symptom, which is the anxiety and the panic attacks, and the social phobia, but we're also allowing people to have this optimal health. So the power of real whole foods for mental health. And this is a picture that I absolutely love. This is the picture I actually wanted on the cover of my book. And I love New Harbinger, and they've been fabulous to work with, but they didn't want to put red meat on the cover. They said it was too political, so we didn't put red meat on the cover, but red meat is definitely part of the protocol. And I'm going to share with you some of the research supporting the adding in red meat. Obviously, this is a really big chunk of red meat. This would probably be 4 meals for one person, but this is real food, you know, beautiful, organic, real food instead of all the processed foods. So the 2 things that I impress upon my clients when I'm working with them is that we want to eat quality food. So organic, free range, grass-fed, wild. The quality is really important, and obviously real whole foods. And this, together with eating according to your own unique needs, can prevent and alleviate anxiety, obsessive tendencies, worry, panic attacks, depression, and maintain the optimal health that I was just talking about. Not just the food, also some nutrients. A lot of people can just do the first, you know, 3 to 4 steps of my program and do perfectly well. And I'll give you one example, as I said at the end. But some people need additional support. Their serotonin's too low, and just changing the diet is not going to be enough. Or they've been on gluten for long enough that their gut is so damaged that they've got really low zinc levels, and then we will need to supplement with zinc. But food first, and then adding in some of these nutrients. And I will say to you, when I'm working with people, we are doing the food changes and adding the supplements at the same time. I don't have them just do all the food changes because certainly adding in the amino acids can help people get off the sugar and can help them get off the junk food and the gluten. It just makes it easier so they're not having to use willpower. But the basis of everything that I'm doing is eating, having my clients eat real whole food. So let's go into some of the research. Dr. Felice Jacka is one of my favorite researchers. She actually have been in correspondence with her right from when she first put out this paper in 2010, and I was doing the research for my book. And she's put out about 8, I think she's got 8 more papers related to food, and then some other papers related to nutrients and mental health. And she's on a mission to get food and nutrients as part of mainstream therapy, which is absolutely fantastic. So this is a study looking at Australian women, and what they found is that there was this big difference between those that were eating the Western diet versus the modern diet and the traditional diet. So obviously the Western diets, all the processed foods, all the junk foods, fried foods, and because it was in Australia, they also had beer as part of the Western diet. They also looked at groups of women who were eating this modern diet, the sort of semi-vegetarian, fruit salad, tofu, legumes, nuts, yogurt, red wine, and then also fish, so semi-vegetarian. And then they looked at a group that were eating the traditional diet, and this was the real whole foods, vegetables, fruit, fish, whole grains, and grass-fed red meat. And what they found is that there was a lower risk of depression and anxiety with those that were eating this traditional diet. Now, I want to just say something about this. This was a study done in Australia, and the majority of beef in Australia is grass-fed. So anytime you're looking at studies that talk about red meat is to see where they are done and to see what the quality of the meat is. And there's a very big difference that we obviously all know the difference between a grass-fed versus a feedlot meat. And Dr. Jacka is saying that, yes, red meat is important, and she was quite frankly surprised that red meat showed up as being important, and she's doing some more research in this area to show how beneficial the red meat is. So this is one of her studies. Now this is another one that was done by another researcher in Australia. Again, Australia. So here again we have the quality of the meat that was very beneficial. And this was a DASH study, so dietary approaches to stop hypertension, which is very well researched to lower high blood pressure. But what they found is that in these postmenopausal women, their bone health improved, plus their mood improved. And what the researchers said that they found that they felt that the lean red meat was associated with a decrease in depression. They didn't actually mention anxiety, but because we know that anxiety often goes hand in hand with depression, we can assume that it would likely have improved the anxiety as well. I do want to just say, when it comes to all the research, most of the research with all of this tends to be depression. And some of the researchers will add in parameters to look at anxiety levels. And every time a study comes out with depression, I'll email them and say, did you also look at anxiety? And they say no. So there is a lot more research on depression, but because of the overlap, we can make some extrapolations until we get more research that comes out. And then a few more by Dr. Jacka. This was another one that Dr. Jacka did. And this one was after my book was published, because my book was published in June 2011. So there's a lot of new research that has come out since then. This was the first one that she did was looking at adolescents, and it was over 2,000 adolescents, 11 to 18, and they looked at those eating the healthy diet. And I like that she actually split out the difference between number of fruits and vegetables, 2 fruits but 4 vegetables, because I don't like saying, eat 2 to 6 fruits and vegetables a day. That could be all fruit and no vegetables. So she actually differentiated between the number of fruits and vegetables. She did talk about breakfast, which I think is fabulous, and healthy snacks. A packed lunch, this is Australian schools, they don't have school lunches, and they didn't have any of the processed foods. And when the kids who had the worst diets, kids with the worst diets had worse mental health, and those had better mental health when they improved their diet. So definite connection between diet and mental health. And then she did another study, also in 2011, looking at a population with bipolar disorder, and again, similar to the Australian women study, those that were eating the traditional diet that included red meat had a lower risk for bipolar disorder compared to those that were eating the junk food diet. So this is this particular one in the Australian women study was not a cause and effect. It's just showing this correlation. But I know from the work that I do and working on a clinical level that clients do see improvements. So the more research we have like this, the better things are. And Dr. Jacka sends letters off to journals, saying that we need to do more research, and you'll see at the bottom of all her studies saying We need more research so we can actually confirm that this is, in fact, the way we need to be going. Fortunately, it takes a long time for the research to trickle through into the mainstream, and that's what I feel my job is getting out there and getting it into the mainstream as much as I can. So just to recap, for those of you that don't know, the Anti-Anxiety Food Solution, I have 4 different diets. 3 of them are gluten-free. So the first one is gluten-free, and everyone gets on that initially when they come and work with me. The next one is gluten-free, dairy-free. The third one is the GAPS or the paleo diet, so that's no grains, no legumes, watching starchy vegetables in case someone has SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth in case you don't know what SIBO is. And then the fourth one is a combination of one of the above, depending on each person's biochemical individuality, and then adding in the nourishing foods like the sauerkraut and the soaked grains and the soaked nuts, if those are tolerated, adding in the fermented vegetables, all of adding in the organ meats. So those are the 4 different diets that I use with my clients. So just to summarize, real foods, good quality, eating frequently enough to control blood sugar. I mentioned this quality animal protein, non-starchy, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, good healthy fats, and I'm going to share some research on some of these in a second. Keeping hydrated with herbal teas, not coffee, and avoiding all the empty foods like the coffee and the sugar, and then eating the bonus foods, which I just mentioned. And then some people need to avoid legumes, starchy fresh vegetables, the gluten-free whole grains and other grains, and dairy, depending on their own biochemical individuality. So grass-fed red meat. I love this picture. This is from US Wellness Meats. I love them. I just love any source that can provide a good quality red meat from cows that are humanely treated and are eating what they're supposed to eat. So obviously the quality of meat is very different when it's grass-fed, and when Dr. Jacka's first study came out, the one looking at the Australian women, she actually commented in some articles on this, the quality of the feedlot red meat, and said that because they fed corn, they obviously have higher levels of the omega-6s, and what she said is that the fatty acid profile is far less healthy and may, in fact, be associated with more mental health problems. We know that grass-fed red meat has good levels of omega-3s, similar to what we would see in salmon, for example, wild salmon. And this excites a lot of my clients because some of them are not fish eaters and they want to get those omega-3s. And there's a lot of research supporting the benefits of omega-3s. I'm going to share with you some of that, and also why some people may not need omega-3 supplements. I don't believe everybody needs omega-3 supplements. But the other benefits that we get from grass-fed red meat, more CLA, more vitamin E, C, glutathione, and beta-carotene. And there is research showing that the quality of red meat is important, and when we have good quality red meat, it's shown to be protective for the heart and actually protective against cancer. So there is research supporting that, and it really boils down to the quality. I think that the feedlot meat with the hormones and the antibiotics is a big factor in some of the negative results that we're seeing in some of the research. Some of the other benefits that we get from red meat is obviously getting all the amino acids, which are the building blocks for making the neurotransmitters, the zinc, the iron. I see a lot of people who've given up red meat and they've got very low iron levels, and iron is one of the cofactors for making serotonin, for making GABA, for making some of the other neurotransmitters. So getting that good quality meat so you're getting all those nutrients is really important. Now I mentioned fish. So obviously wild fish is important, and there's research supporting the connection between fish and omega-3s and mood problems. Again, most of the research in this area has been done on depression. There is a newer study that just came out on anxiety, but this 2001 study, less depression in countries that eat more fish. There was research showing that there's a link between farmed fish consumption and an increased risk of diabetes. This was a 2010 study, and they are proposing that it is the mercury levels in the fish food that the fish were eating. So it would be nice if we could have farm fish that were sustainably farmed and didn't have to need antibiotics and didn't eat food that contained mercury. Then that might be a nice option. But in the meantime, we really need to look at the quality of the fish. Of course, I'll always tell my clients the colors that the fish is fed to make them nice and pink, and do you really want that in your diet as well? Now, I mentioned that some people do not need fish oil, and this is shown in the research. You'll see some studies that show mood improvements on fish oil, and then you'll actually see some studies that show that there's no real benefits. And obviously, this points to biochemical individuality. We are all unique. Some people need the additional support and others don't. What I have found is that those people with pyroluria tend not to need omega-3 supplements. They rather need the omega-6s in the form of the evening primrose oil. And I've seen this with testing, doing urine testing to test for pyroluria. And just remember, for those of you that don't know, pyroluria is this genetic condition where you have a higher need for zinc and vitamin B6 and the omega-6 in the form of evening primrose oil. And you have the social anxiety, the inattention, and when you get on those supplements, then this social anxiety and the inattention goes away. People with pyroluria tend not to need omega-3s, and I've seen that, as I said, looking at the urine test for the pyroluria test, and then also looking at fatty acid testing levels, and most of them do not need omega-3s. So I do think it's a good idea to do testing to figure out if someone actually needs omega-3s. Too much of something like this obviously is not a good thing. So research when it comes to veggies and fruits and fats, a lot of research showing a connection between pesticides and farm workers. And you would expect this because they're exposed to high levels of pesticides. But we see cognitive problems, we see a lot of anxiety research, and a lot of depression. And I would have to say maybe 20 different studies looking at this connection between farm workers and pesticides, which is very unfortunate. But there was a study done in 2010 that actually looked at low levels of pesticides in kids and found an increased risk of ADHD. And what they did is they took the non-organic fruits and vegetables out of their diets, gave them organic fruits and vegetables, and their ADHD symptoms improved. So just a very small amount made a big difference. Of course, kids are more affected because they've got developing brains, and they do respond very quickly to this type of thing. So definitely we want to encourage organic. This is actually a picture in South Africa on a trip that I went back recently, pineapple plantation up the road from where my mom lives, and beautiful, organic, local, in season. You can't beat driving past one of these plantations and just getting this beautiful waft of lovely, fresh pineapples. But let's go on to fats. There's a number of studies obviously supporting the benefits of healthy fats and improved mental health. An animal study in 2010 actually found that olive oil reduced anxiety, so there we've got another great benefit for olive oil. And then there's been a number of studies looking at trans fats and how it increases the risk for depression and actually anger issues as well. So another good reason for having our clients avoid these trans fats. So step 2 is sugar. And sugar is just so prevalent in our society, it's scary. And it's so toxic, as we all know. And, birthdays, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, parties, you name it. Treats, grandparents treating their grandchildren. It's just everywhere in our society, and it really is a big part of anxiety. So I am a proponent of no sugar. A lot of people will say, We can have a treat on occasion. Small amount is fine. There are these healthier sweeteners that we can go for. I am of the opinion that we should not have any sugar. We shouldn't be adding sugar or any other sweetener to what we eat. This is, part of my questionnaire that I have for my clients. Are you eating processed foods, yogurt, candy, soda, even diet sodas, sports drinks, fruit juice, obviously very high in sugar? Have you got a sweet tooth? Are you replacing what you used to use, white sugar with honey or agave nectar? Even the coconut sugar, it's just too much sugar. Xylitol, stevia do not affect blood sugar levels, but still, if you want that sweet taste on your tongue, that's a sign of some kind of imbalance. And we should get to the point where we don't need to eat a whole box of cookies, and we don't go for comfort eating. We don't feel guilty when we've eaten a whole bar of chocolate, and we don't feel like we need to use willpower. And that's a big issue with a lot of my clients. So a lot of people with anxiety will have stress eating. They may have low endorphins, so they'll go for comfort eating, and no amount of willpower is going to help them get off the sugar. They know intuitively they need to get off it, but they need neurotransmitter support so that they can get off it. And I'm going to share with you how sugar can actually increase anxiety. So we'll see, just checking the time here. Okay, we're doing good. So sugar can obviously increase anxiety by causing these fluctuations in blood sugar levels. And there's plenty of evidence supporting the swing in blood sugar levels causing anxiety, fears, nervousness, irritability, feeling stressed. And some people will even have a full-blown panic attack when their blood sugar dips too low. Then there's this other reason, which is the sugar can elevate levels of lactate in the blood, and this can actually cause anxiety and panic attacks. And there are some people that get anxiety that are just more prone to the effects of lactate. The sugar obviously depletes us of some of these nutrients. When we're digesting the food containing these sugars, we use up chromium, manganese, zinc, magnesium, the B vitamins, and some of these nutrients themselves are very beneficial for anxiety. Chromium is great for blood sugar control, but it also has there's research showing that it actually helps reduce anxiety. Manganese is a nutrient that helps with histamine levels and pyroluria. Zinc is one of my top nutrients when it comes to anxiety, very commonly deficient. And if we, we've got people consuming sugar and it's depleting their zinc levels, that's just negating everything that we're doing. Of course, magnesium is very calming, and the B vitamins very important for adrenal health. And appetite is also spoiled. So if someone comes home and they eat a big slice of cake and they don't have their dinner, they're getting all the nutrient, they're not getting the nutrient-dense foods, they're getting all the anti-nutrients, so they're losing out from that point of view. And then there is a lot of new research showing this connection between emotional eating and weight gain and stress eating, and the connections between cortisol and some of the neurotransmitters. So one of the newer studies, I think this one came out late last year, showing this link between high cortisol, ghrelin, which is the hormone that increases appetite, and stress eating and weight gain. So we need to address high cortisol levels. Low cortisol levels, of course, are important as well. If someone's got low cortisol, they may have low energy, and they may go for energy eating. And then there's a lot of research showing how sugar and carbs actually will give us this serotonin boost. So we'll feel happy initially, but then it's going to cause all these other problems. So if we can address that with some of the food changes and some of the neurotransmitters, then we're not going to have these issues. So step 3 is removal of caffeine, and this is a tough one for a lot of my clients. And when I'm doing my presentation, I'll see these looks of horror in the audience, and it's a really tough one for a lot of people to get rid of. We self-medicate with caffeine, just like we do with sugar and like we do with chocolate. We use it like a drug, and it is a drug. There's a lot of research showing that it'll increase heart rate and restlessness and anxiety, actually can cause depression, tremors. I've seen some clients actually shaking from having had their morning coffee and then coming to see me. Definitely can affect sleep, and then causes this excessive urination. So you need to drink more to counteract the dehydrating effects of the caffeine, and then some people can even get nausea from it. And there are a subset of people who are just more sensitive to the effects of the caffeine. Those with panic disorder and those with social anxiety. And I happen to be one of them. I can't do any caffeine at all. I can't do coffee. I can't do chocolate. The caffeine really affects me. And I have a number of clients who are very sensitive to it as well. So as I said, it's tough, but it is very effective. And I'll say to my clients, why do we want to add supplements? Why do we want to make all these changes, do all this testing, and it may just be the caffeine that's causing your anxiety? There is research showing that removing the caffeine definitely does help. This was an older study in 1989. It was a group with generalized anxiety and panic disorder. None had benefited from meds. None had benefited from the therapy. And they all drank 1.5 to 3.5 cups of coffee a day, which is not a lot when you consider how much some of our clients drink. So when they stopped the coffee, within a week, their anxiety disappeared. The problem is we need to address the underlying fatigue. Why is the person needing that coffee? Why are they using it as their drug of choice? You know, the drug of choice, as I said, could be sugar, it could be coffee. Why do they need it? Have they got burned out adrenals? Doing an adrenal salivary profile to see what their cortisol levels would be a good idea to figure out what's going on there. Do they have anemia? Are they not eating red meat? I had one client who was a vegetarian and wasn't doing any iron supplementation, was not getting any iron in her diet, and she was exhausted and had very low iron levels and was functioning on coffee. So addressing anemia is another thing that would need to be looked at. Is someone not getting enough sleep? You know, someone staying up till 2 in the morning to get work done because the kids are asleep, and that's why they're needing the coffee to get going in the morning. Now, sleep is a big factor. If they've got low serotonin, they'll feel anxious and depressed and have insomnia as well. So sometimes it's a matter of not just behavioral changes or changing the bedroom or changing the light in the room or making sure it's a cool room. It may be a matter of looking at low GABA levels or low serotonin, or looking at parasites, which can keep people awake at night, or low blood sugar. So all of those things that need to be looked at. And then thyroid, of course, as well. If someone has an underactive thyroid, if they've got Hashimoto's thyroiditis, they may be so exhausted that they are using coffee to get going. So I like to look at all of these factors before I'll have someone remove the coffee. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is rooibos tea, which is known in this country as red bush tea often, and I know a lot of people know it as rooibos tea. I grew up in South Africa, grew up drinking rooibos tea, and I've always been a big proponent of it because it has a lot of similar properties that we get in green tea. So for someone who is sensitive to caffeine, rooibos tea may be an option. But the interesting thing is, just this month I saw a new paper that came out from South Africa saying that rooibos tea actually seems to help with cortisol modulation and blood sugar control. So I'm pretty excited to see that there are some options that maybe an option to the coffee and actually is providing some support for people. So I'm a big fan of rooibos tea. Absolutely love it. Black, no sugar, and maybe with a dash of lemon or a slice of lemon, and it's really, really delicious. So step 4 is removal of gluten, and we know now that there's this term gluten sensitivity in the medical literature. When I wrote my book in 2011, it was not as well recognized as it is now. So there is more and more research on gluten and much more awareness, which is fantastic. Most of the research has been done on celiac disease just because the term gluten sensitivity was not well recognized a few years ago. I'm expecting we're going to see a lot more studies on gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance itself. But what the research has shown is that the damage to the gut, the GI, gastrointestinal system, causes malabsorption, and then the person will become deficient in zinc, magnesium, iron, and a host of other nutrients that are important for anxiety. There is actually research showing that celiac disease limits the availability of tryptophan, which it causes this decrease in serotonin, which can cause the anxiety and the depression and the insomnia and all the other things that go with low serotonin, like PMS and fibromyalgia and anger issues and all of these things that can happen with low serotonin. We do know that gluten will give you the psychological high. There are these gluteomorphins, which are opiate-like compounds that are produced during the digestion of the gliadin component of the gluten protein. And you will actually get a high. It will make you feel like you've taken some drugs. And I've had a number of clients who have had tremendously difficult withdrawal symptoms getting off the gluten, because it's just like being on a drug. So we have this whole addicting component of the gluten, and then people will go for the gluten because of the emotional eating. So most people know about the whole GI issue when it comes to gluten: diarrhea, constipation, stomach aches, maybe failure to thrive, weight loss, maybe weight gain because of inflammation. But there's a lot of research showing this connection between celiac disease and mood problems. This particular study in 2002, it was again another group who had anxiety. They weren't benefiting from the anti-anxiety medications. They removed the gluten, and their symptoms of anxiety completely resolved. So the other studies that I mentioned are celiac disease and mood problems, but I'm hoping we're going to see more and more showing that there's this connection between mood problems and gluten intolerance, and I'm pretty sure we will, and there seems to be consensus in the literature now that a lot of people with gluten intolerance can have the same symptoms of celiac disease. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the problem is the testing. I think once the testing is improved and we can get more information on how gluten is affecting different people in different ways, we're going to see that all of this is going to really be grouped together. But certainly studies showing a link between celiac disease and anxiety, a number of studies. Social phobia, fewer studies. Celiac disease and depression, also a number of studies, and then bipolar disorder and schizophrenia as well. And this particular paper that was published in 2012 by Professor Carr in New Zealand actually looked at a young girl who was gluten-free, and she traveled overseas and ate gluten by mistake and became suicidal, anxious, and had very bad anger issues. And when she got back to New Zealand, she got back on a gluten-free diet, and her symptoms completely resolved. And Professor Carr sent this paper to one of the New Zealand journals, and she's another nutritionist in New Zealand who's very interested in this whole connection between food and mood that I've been corresponding with and wants to do some more research. So it seems like the Australians and the New Zealanders are doing a great job with all the research. I do have all my clients do a gluten-free trial. So they'll go gluten-free for 2 weeks. We'll see how what their symptoms are like. They'll keep a log all their mood problems, all their physical problems, and then add the gluten back and then see how they feel as well. Most of my clients decide to stay gluten-free. 80 to 90% do better on a gluten-free diet. So it is a big part of my practice. When it comes to digestion, probiotics have been shown, obviously, to increase the good bacteria, but a number of studies have shown that we see this big decrease in anxiety and depression. When it comes to IBS, 50 to 90% of the people who go to the doctor for IBS have some kind of mood problem, anxiety disorders, and major depression. And we know that most of our serotonin is made in the gut. So I think serotonin levels definitely play a big role in all of this. Obviously, food sensitivities, bacterial overgrowth play a role as well. So this 2008 study, they found that people with food sensitivities, SIBO, or the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is when you have good bacteria but it's in the wrong place because it's in the small intestine, and these people also had ulcerative colitis, they often also had anxiety and depression. So when you heal the gut and you balance you get good bacteria in the gut and get rid of food intolerances, this can often improve mood. And there's research showing that low hydrochloric acid can actually contribute to depression, which would make sense because we need that hydrochloric acid to break down the protein into the amino acids and to get all the other nutrients out of the beautiful grass-fed red meat or wild salmon that we're eating, or beautiful eggs. I didn't mention eggs, but eggs are definitely part of the protein component. And then steps 6 through 9, I said I would just mention these just so you can see how everything ties together. Step 6 is balancing brain chemistry and using the amino acids. So this is using targeted individual amino acids based on a person's unique deficiencies. And it's key to my practice. I will use these right off the bat to help people get off the sugar, to help them get off the coffee, to help them get off the gluten, the cookies, and everything else. And it gives them hope right away because it'll take a number of weeks to figure out if it's a food intolerance, to figure out what's going on with their adrenals, to get blood work and see what's going on with their thyroid, or if they've got anemia. They'll get hope right away, which makes them more motivated to continue and to keep making the food changes that we talk about. So tryptophan is, I tend to use tryptophan more than 5-HTP, but 5-HTP will fall into the boosting serotonin area. So tryptophan and 5-HTP for boosting serotonin, GABA for boosting GABA levels, the calming neurotransmitter, DPA, diphenylalanine for boosting endorphins, and I tend to use this more than the DLPA. In fact, I don't use the DLPA at all. Tyrosine for boosting the catecholamines, and then glutamine for helping to balance blood sugar. And glutamine plays such an important role in gut health as well in terms of healing the gut. But this topic, and we're going to do a whole presentation just on this topic, so we'll do a deep dive into this, but I just wanted to mention it as part of what I do with my clients. And then step 7 is the pyroluria, and this is where you have this social anxiety and this inattention. And here the nutrients are zinc, vitamin B6, and evening primrose oil. And of course these, the zinc and the B6 are raw materials for making the neurotransmitters. And I would say about half of my clients have symptoms of pyroluria, and getting on these nutrients will help address the anxiety and the social anxiety symptoms, but also helps to make the serotonin, the GABA, and the other neurotransmitters that they need. And then step 8 is looking at everything else like low vitamin D, low cholesterol, because if cholesterol is too low, it's a problem when it comes to mood. Underactive thyroid, the adrenals, I mentioned those. Drug-induced nutrient depletions like the birth control depletes folic acid and B6. And then, of course, the nasty benzodiazepines, which is another big reason I do what I do, because I've seen so many people whose lives have been totally destroyed by benzodiazepines. So if people can know about this so they don't have to go on the benzodiazepines in the first place, that would be fantastic. So the benzodiazepines are Ativan, Xanax, those Valium, those types of drugs. And then, of course, the final step, obviously, lifestyle, exercise, sleep, laughter, meditation, yoga, and all those good things. So I'm going to just give you 2 case studies, and then we'll be wrapping up here. So this was a recent client of mine, a young woman, very anxious, very obsessive, and is actually on medication, Ritalin for ADHD. And I had been working with her grandmother who has celiac disease and is gluten-free and doing really well. And she wanted her granddaughter to come in and see me. And the 2 changes that they made, the only 2 changes that they made was to have this, I had the mom have her daughter go gluten-free. And it was challenging because they are, the daughters spend some of the time at her father's house because the family are, it's a divorced family. So it was challenging in terms of logistics, but they agreed to go gluten-free. And the other big thing that they agreed was to have breakfast that included protein, and she would make her eggs or sausage, or they would make eggs with a gluten-free bread and some kind of other protein. And those are the only 2 things that they did. And it was very interesting because when they came in to see me, the mom didn't bring her daughter in the first time because she said her daughter is so anxious and she would not be able to sit and see me. But they came in after 2 weeks, and the daughter came with her the second time. And I looked at this little girl and I said, and so, how did it go? How are you doing? And she said, I'm not anxious. My grades are better. I get on better with my brother, and my stomach's not sore. And she was happy. And her mom said to me she wasn't obsessive anymore. She wasn't paranoid about some of the little friendships that she had. And all they did was take the gluten out and then change breakfast. And she's a happy little kid, and she doesn't want to add back the gluten. So this is very powerful, just making those changes. And the doctor had been talking to them about putting her on anti-anxiety medication. So I'm really glad that she's done this, and I'm hoping we can, when I saw her, we also tested her zinc levels, and her zinc is really low, and I got on a zinc supplement. So when I see them again, hopefully things are doing a little bit better, and she can eventually get off the Ritalin. And then this is another client of mine, a woman in her 30s, really bad eczema all down the side of her face, down her neck. It was so bad that she could not go to the gym. She couldn't shower. It burned her too much. She came to see me because she was anxious and depressed, and she was an emotional eater who just loved cookies. And like everyone else, I put her on a gluten-free trial. And right off the bat, I gave her GABA to help her with the anxiety, and I gave her tryptophan to help with the depression and the cravings. And this enabled her to get off the cookies. And the first week she came back, no improvement at all, but what we found was wheat in the whey protein. And the second week, truly gluten-free, and the results were amazing. Her skin had started to heal. Within a few weeks, she was able to go back to the gym again. And she was able to stop the amino acids a few weeks later because it was the gluten that was causing her anxiety and depression. Once she got off the gluten, she didn't need the tryptophan or the GABA long term. Most people will need them, I would say, a month, 2 months, 3 months. She just needed them for a few weeks. And she actually went back to her doctor and got off her antidepressant, and she was a new person with making these changes. So this is the quote that was read right at the beginning, and I just want to read it again because I think it is so fantastic that it is in the American Journal of Psychiatry, which is a mainstream medical journal, saying it is both compelling and daunting to consider that dietary intervention at an individual or population level could reduce rates of psychiatric disorders. There are exciting implications for clinical care, public health, and research. And this was 2010, and we are now in 2014, and we're not seeing this as part of public health, and it really needs to be. With all the research that we've got, with everything that we know, and with all these wonderful nutritionists who are so excited and so driven to help people live healthier lives. So I'm hoping that this information will give you some more information that you can take back to your clients to help motivate them to make some of these changes so that they can just feel absolutely fantastic. And that's all that I have for you. I do want to just mention that I am active on Facebook, so if you would like to join the discussion, Trudy Scott Anti-Anxiety Food Solution on Facebook, come on over and introduce yourself, and we have lots of very healthy discussions there about various different topics. And of course, Paul had mentioned my website, Antianxietyfoodsolution.com, and everywoman over29.com. And if you'd like to join my community and get on my newsletter list, I would love to have you join. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. And Paula, you're going to take over.
All right. We'll come back and forth a little bit, Trudy. There are some questions and some comments, but I want to thank you for just the wealth of information that you presented here. It's just so fantastic that you are bringing this research, delving into it and bringing it to our attention. The studies really show the correlation and provide validation for what we teach and for the work we do. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just really fantastic. And I want to give you some comments and feedback and a few questions from the audience. This one is, she appreciates hearing about your research because the only time in my life when I felt depressed was when I was a vegetarian for a number of years. It went away when I added meat back into my diet. I wonder if the need for more research you mentioned to look further at the relationship of anxiety and depression and grass-fed meats and fats would be a good candidate for the new partnership of the Burnside's research lab at the University of Illinois and the Weston Price Foundation. Also, have you been following Dr. Tom O'Brien's Gluten Summit? It's a wonderful collection of presentations with information on the latest testing.
Yes, so let me answer the second part. Yes, I have followed Dr. Tom O'Brien's Gluten Summit. I think he's fabulous, and I think the speakers are fantastic. And I know earlier on you mentioned the Future of Nutrition Conference, which was also fabulous. It's great to hear all these amazing practitioners out there. So yes to both of those, thank you. And I would like to find more about this Burnside's Research Institute. Maybe you can send me that information afterwards, because I don't know about it, but I think it would be great to do some research in this area. This is another area that I'm very excited about, is doing some of my own research. So I haven't got there yet, but I've got a lot of people who are interested, and if I can facilitate anything or motivate anyone to do something, I think that would be fantastic. And what I didn't mention right at the beginning is that when I started to have my anxiety issues, I was a vegetarian. So I had come to America and thought that being a vegetarian was a healthy thing after seeing some very horrible movies about animal treatment, and was eating a lot of soy, which totally wrecked my digestive system, and you know, I ended up becoming very depleted. So I do find that a lot of people who are vegetarians and maybe not eating the healthiest vegetarian diet do seem to have mood problems. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I'm glad that you are doing so much better. So thank you for sharing that.
And I think it's important here to also recognize the information that's out there, and the impact that it's having on individuals. I mean, when you present your case studies, it just takes the research and puts it into clinical practice, and you see very powerful results. And I think that, you know, this is an excellent thesis topic, and you just offered to facilitate and to conduct your own research. And so I'm just putting it out there for those of you that are considering what you're going to do for your thesis at Hawthorn, that this is a good area. There's a lot of information in here to go into different aspects of. So take that little prompt and put it in your pocket and see what you come up with.
Great, yes, and contact me. Let's talk.
Absolutely.
Maybe I should come and do, I need to come to Hawthorn and do my master's there, and then I can do it too. It's on my list.
All right. So just comment back about, it's Chris Masterjohn who's doing the research at Burnside Research Lab in conjunction with the Weston Price Foundation.
Okay, great.
So we'll get you more on that also. When you said that for people that were dealing with pyroluria, and I want to say that, you know, you're going to do a whole talk on pyroluria. It's worthy of a talk, and there's a question here about the MTHFR gene that I'll pose, and we're giving a presentation on that as well. Two important but little known health conditions that are on the rise and really needs to be discussed. So you talked about that for people with pyroluria, they often don't need omega-3 supplements, and I think for this population or anyone that it's also important to review their diet and see what the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is, and the quality of the foods that they're eating of each of those, do a diet analysis on what they're eating. And you know, if there's symptoms that present, or there's an imbalance here, then I think, yeah, your point for testing is important. And certainly understanding if they're dealing with pyroluria will be very helpful also.
Yes.
So do you, I'm sorry.
No, I agree. Did you have another question about the MTHFR? Because I have been seeing and hearing that a lot of people with pyroluria do seem to have the defect. So
they're often going hand in hand. Yeah. Margie Andrews is also going to give a presentation here coming up on this. But the question from the audience says, do you recommend testing for the MTHFR gene followed by adequate supplementation with appropriate vitamins, especially folate, P5P, methyl, or hydroxycobalamin?
Yes, I do, and I was using the 23andMe testing, and then there were some issues with that, but I believe you can still do the testing, and I found that that's a great affordable test that most people can do, and I think it's an area that I'm learning about. I just attended Dr. Ben Lynch's presentation, two-day presentation up in Portland late last year. So it's an area that is relatively new to me, and I'm diving in and learning as much as I can, because I do think it's something that needs to be considered with as many people that we have with this defect.
All right. Just so everybody knows, Margie Andrew is going to be presenting this. She's doing a two-part, and so March 18th and April 1st will be Margie speaking about, first she's going to give an overview of detoxification as it applies to this gene mutation of the MTHFR gene, and then we'll go into that in more detail. This person has a grandson with severe anxiety and depression and OCD, and wonders if you consult with clients remotely.
I do, yes.
There's a good one.
And I wanted to just mention something about OCD. We didn't talk about that because you didn't really talk about the nutrients. The raising serotonin levels can help with some of the OCD symptoms, and then if that's not, so that we're using tryptophan, and I've had great results with young boys. I'm actually working with a young boy at the moment who's got really bad OCD. Tryptophan helps to some extent, and then inositol has been researched to help with OCD, and I've had good results with inositol as well. But I would be happy to help if I can.
Okay. This person took tryptophan and 5-HTP for anxiety, but was unable to sleep with that supplement. Have you heard of that before, and do you know why that might be the case?
Yes. So the depending on the amount, when I'm working with someone either on the phone or in the office, I'll have them do a trial. So we'll rate their symptoms, maybe anxiety is like an 8 or a 9, take some tryptophan and see what the level, how much it changes. The problem is we're all unique, and if someone is very sensitive to small amounts of supplements, the starting dose for tryptophan is 500 milligrams. That may be too much for someone. The starting dose for 5-HTP is 50 milligrams, and if someone's very sensitive, that might be too much. So tryptophan and 5-HTP convert to serotonin, and then some of it is used to make melatonin. So it typically helps sleep, but if it's too much, you can actually get the reverse effect, and it might make you have sleep problems. I'm not sure if the anxiety got worse, but that you might see that getting worse, or you may find that the depression is worse. The other thing is sleep. The 5-HTP has been shown in research to raise cortisol levels, and if someone's got high cortisol, it's possible that the 5-HTP raised the cortisol more and affected the sleep. I haven't seen that with tryptophan, but I would look for something else. You know, we're all unique, and it might have just been too much, or it might have been that you didn't need those amino acids. The beauty of the amino acids is you don't have to take them for a month before you know if they're working. If you are getting results, either positive or adverse reactions, within 3 days, you know you're either onto a good thing or you know you shouldn't take them.
Mm-hmm. And there's also, it's a difficult question because, it's so isolated and you don't know anything else about this person. Yes. And there could be a number of contributing factors, and many that you mentioned throughout the presentation, including parasites, not being able to sleep at night, but a whole host of things that would, if someone would see you, that you would review before just saying, oh, you can't sleep, well then take tryptophan. No, it's much more comprehensive.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, and did the person also have some of the other low serotonin symptoms, and yeah, and how many times did they do it, to confirm that that was happening? Was it just once, or did it happen over the course of a week? So yeah, as you say, there are a lot of factors.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think that we should come to a conclusion here for this. There's just a lot of information and details in this presentation. So for people that want to review it in more detail and come back to it, it is recorded and is being archived and will be on the Hawthorn website, so you can review it. And there's a lot of other archived webinars there too that you can review, but this will be there in a couple of days. And there's a great follow-up on this, so I hope that you'll join us for part 2 of this when Trudy goes into it in more detail on the 18th. I want to just say one thing I have to pass along this comment. It's like, I met Trudy at the 2012 NAMP conference, exclamation point. This was a highly professional yet conversational presentation. Trudy is a wellspring of knowledge, inspiration, and hope. I certainly agree, and delighted that you're coming back for more with this.
Oh,
so I invite you to join us for our next webinar, which is Tuesday, February 18th at 4 p.m. Where Trudy's going to be presenting part 2 of this mental health series and talking about specific individual amino acids and the neurotransmitters and how to bring them into balance. And we'll be sure to bring out some more details for you in the coming week. So this does conclude today's presentation. Thank you again, Trudy.
Thank you.
There will be a survey to fill out after the webinar ends, and that really helps us to have your feedback and comments. And so I hope that you'll take the time to take a couple minutes and fill that out. And as a host of the webinar series, I invite you to come at 4:50 Pacific time, 10 minutes early, so that you can join us for the information and announcements period before the webinar starts. And by next webinar, we're going to try to have this be more interactive so that you can participate too. I think that's it. I want to thank you all for attending this webinar. If you want more information about our programs or courses, of course, please visit our website. There's a lot of information there. And new courses are coming online all the time. And we'll be talking with Trudy about doing some more with us. So pay attention for that, and stay in tune with our website for more details. So I want to thank you again, Trudy, and thank you to James Bernardinelli for engineering, and thanks to everyone for sharing this educational experience. It's really good to learn together.
It is.
Yeah, it's really nice. So I wish you all the best of health, and hope you'll join us for our next webinar on February 18th when we have Trudy Scott back again. All right. Thank you, and take good care until then.